So now we're going to change direction. We're going to go to market principle 2. The first one was how to deal with all customers are different and how to deal with heterogeneity. Now we're going to say all customers change. Why do they change? Again, the very first slide gets into, do we believe it? Customers' desires change for most products and services, change over time, and due to specific events. Let's think of them. Consumers' need change. Cars, we talked about beauty, clothes, foods, financial. These all change as consumers age. Pretty straightforward. They also have trigger events. Does marriage, kids, job, all these things change. Everybody knows the story about Target where they mailed the magazine to the guy's house that had maternity stuff in it. And he says, why are you mailing it to me? 2 months later, he found out his daughter was pregnant. Come to find out, the algorithms in Target's system could identify based on what you bought, what you shopped, fairly accurately, and they gave targeted campaign to it. Because they know you buy a lot of things in that window. When you buy a new house, when you have a kid, when you get married, it's a huge shopping experience. So they're aimed. Guns are loaded. Anything that triggers that, the marketers hit you. And it's a very good thing to go do because it really works. Industry and markets change. Experience curve, price points go down as manufacturers, all sorts of things happen. So ultimately what we're saying is customer needs, and we're customer-centric, we're trying to solve customers' problems. They change, or they vary, not only due to differences in all of you, you're all different people, you have different needs, but also as people and markets change. So we have two things. So as a marketer, this is a tough target. Every target is different, and they're all changing simultaneously at different directions. So we have to make sense of that. So this is what we're going to talk about, is how to deal with dynamics. Segmentation needs to account for life cycle changes. So let's talk about how we can do that. Again, we're going to go through some frameworks. The three processes or ways to think about it. Usually when we talk about frameworks, what we've learned is there's ways to cut the problem and think about it, that it makes it simple or makes it intuitive. One is the life cycle, and this is the standard life cycle. We'll talk about it quick. I think probably most of you are aware of it. The next is a little bit more sophisticated. It's called the acquisition, expansion, retention bathtub. It's the idea you look at customers coming in, you look at expanding, they're coming out, you have lost customers, and how do you manage that dynamic bathtub? Water in, water out, there's some water. How do you deal with that? We're going to actually have another workshop just on the customer acquisition part of that. It was one of the top 3 things that people were interested in. And then lost customer. Why do we care about lost customers? If there's a couple of things I'll say. If there's anything you remember, this would be one of them. If you want to know where do problems show up first, right there, lost customers. It is concentrated information. When I go out and survey people, I survey people and I say, what do you know? Do you want a dual processor with 4 blah, blah, blah? And the person's like, yeah, it sounds pretty good. You know, they might not be knowledgeable about that. They might never even shop for that product. And you get them into your database. It's very hard. It's not clean. These people bought from you, they know you, and they left you. It's like talking to the ex. A lot of good information in talking to the ex. You should have a system to track these. You can't let the salespeople debrief them. It'll never be the salesperson sucks, right? It'll be the price is too high. The product was too late. My competitor's stuff is better. You have somebody, you can't mail them surveys, they don't respond. You call them on the phone, I mean face-to-face if it's a huge product, but you call them on the phone, somebody who is not involved, they've never dealt with before, and say, I'm from the customer follow-up, I see, and you have a little trigger, let's say they buy normally once a month, at 2 months you call them, and you say, and you can do an outbound call when there's not time going on, when they're not busy, and you say, I'm calling you to normally buy every month, you haven't bought in 2 months, and I was following up and see what conditions have changed. And you go through a series of open probes, and at the end you might say, well, if I gave you 5 categories, could you tell me the primary one that caused you to leave? Salesperson, product, price, service, whatever. And you go do it. This is where stuff will show up. But what's the problem about when it shows up here? You know, it's already happened, right? I mean, but it's still better until it shows up on your income statement, right? Because then it's really down the road. What are some of the analysis? Customer lifetime value. Everybody know what I mean when I say customer lifetime value? It's a way to put a value on a customer. I'm going to talk about it a little bit more. It's a discounted cash flow of a customer. If that doesn't make sense, let me come back to it in a minute. We also have some mathematical techniques to do this, and I'll explain that a little, called the Hidden Markov Model. It does the same segmentation like the cluster, but it also looks at how people moves between clusters and gives you the probability for each customer on moving to the next segment. And it does it all simultaneously. Very, very cool. It's just a mathematical technique to do it. We're not going to go into that much. And there are some other models, latent choice. I want to just talk for a minute on choice models. It's a model that everybody here should know about. A lot of your firms are probably running it. What it does, if I have a group of customers and the outcome is like a 1-0, they go or they stay. I retain them or I lose them. Or maybe they bought my product or did not buy my product. I can feed anything in my CRM database, anything in my database about surveying them, visiting them, and every variable I'll feed in, it'll tell me how much that variable impacts the probability of them going in or out and the elasticity. And the elasticity is important because it gives me, for a 1% change in that variable, how much percent change does it do in the outcome. So in other words, you have all these marketing treatments. You want to know which ones work? Let's say I'm looking back at the EMBA example. We might have a face-to-face visit. I might mail you a brochure. I might invite you to a reception. I could do dozens of things. I could feed that all in the equation. At the end, it'll tell me really the ROI, if I know the cost, the ROI of every single marketing thing I do and how much it impacts the outcome. Plus, what it'll do once I get the model tuned up, I can do for anybody in my database, I can put a percent probability on their behavior. How likely are they to do it? It's a very, very powerful individual customer choice model. I'd say there's three models that are the three most widely used models in marketing. Cluster, you put them in groups. Choice, just remember, it allows you to model what customers do. And for everything you feed into the model, it tells you how much impact it has in the outcome. That is just a very, very good model. You can run it in Excel with an Excel add-on. Now, the good model, you buy the software and all, but very neat. And then some of these same ones we saw before. So let me go through. I want to make sure you get the process and the framework down, and then I'll talk maybe a little bit more about the models. Life cycle. This is kind of what you learn in undergrad marketing. It works. Very, very simplistic. I call it a first approximation. OK is about as strong as I ever could get on it. What you pretty much do, it assumes all customers move to the stages of your buying cycle for your product in a smooth fashion. So if we're looking at the medical, they go in, they birth, and then they go up and they get some shots at certain ages, and then they go on and ultimately they get overweight and die or something. I don't know, whatever it is. You go through whatever we do. Those would be all the stages. That can work, but does everybody move through the cycles at the same time? Not necessarily. So it misses the unique trigger point. It ignores the temporal heterogeneity. What I mean by that is we all don't move through the cycle. Some people age very quick. Some people take care of themselves. They don't smoke. They eat well, and they might go through it a lot slower. It doesn't take that into account. It assumes everybody moves the same. So how does this work? And if nothing else, you should have this for your firm. You should understand how customers migrate through the life cycle at your firm. Buick was, for a period of time, not really paying attention to that. In the introduction stage, and you can do this for a new product you launch. You could think of it. You launch a new product, it gets introduced. The majority of sales due to trial. What do you focus on? You want people to try your product. So you might set up kiosks. You might give it to people in the airport to demo it or try it. These are the kind of things you do. Growth is here. Now increasing sales due to repeat business. More focus on retaining. You want to start building loyalty. Up here, you're not focused on building loyalty. You're just trying to get acquisition. You're just trying to get new customers. Here, you're trying to build loyalty. These are the offensive strategies. Let's look at the defensive. That's these two. When they get up here in the maturity stage, few new buyers. Offering becomes standardized, often on aggressive pricing. Why is the industry usually have too much capacity right there? What happens is when you're a marketer and you're right here, or a salesperson, what kind of forecast do you give? Do you give that the line's going to keep going like that? Or you say, oh no, next week it's going to flatten. Nobody lets you get away with that, right? It's going like this forever. So when you're building a factory, how long does it take to build a factory or whatever you're doing, or coffee shop or whatever? It takes a long time, lead time. So they're building here, assuming the volume's going to be here. All your competitors are doing the same thing. The volume tops. And now everybody has big factories, and what do they want to do? Fill them up. And then you say, all I got to do is sell it above marginal cost. I've already paid for the factory. This happens to the airline industry all the time. They have all these equipment, all this plane. I just need to put people in the seats. The plane's flying anyway. So they lower prices to put people in the seat. And that makes a terrible market. Small bonuses. Because no margins. Everybody gets beat up. And that's usually when a lot of people drop out of the industry, the people with bad cost structures. And then the decline, do you harvest, do you get in it? You can see how that's a fairly simplistic way to think of it. But what are they trying to deal? They're trying to deal with customer dynamics. But they're assuming everybody does it the same. Not a very good way to do it. Here is a better second approximation. Because most firms, you can go out and mathematically model this and actually decide how customers are moving. But I don't recommend starting there. Why? It's very complicated and it's not intuitive. What I say, start here as a second. When you get this and you really think you understand it, then you can go to the third level, which is pretty sophisticated modeling. And I would only do it if you felt there was a financial return to understand customers that well. Some markets, you don't have to know them that well. So let's think of this box. Customers come in, we acquire them. They float around here in our customer portfolio. Some of them we might upsell or cross-sell. Some here are getting ready to leave, and some are gone. So when we talked about the first principle, if you will, that all customers are different, we were worried about all the customers in the world, all of our potential customers. Now I'm going to just worry about my own customers, We want to really understand how customers move through our business. And we want to understand how to deal with them at each stage. So this bathtub approximation, if you will, evaluates existing customers' behaviors and needs in each stage. So again, I'm going to break these in stages. Because why do I want to do stages? It's a lot easier to conceptualize than if I try to treat every customer as an individual. Even though that's the best way to do it, we're going to do them in stages. If customers are temporally similar. So I'm arguing when people buy their first car. Now remember, I've already gone after my target customers. These are only my target customers that came in. So I've lost a lot of the customers. If I'm selling minivans, all the people buying Porsches and all, they're not here. This is just minivan. So these are pretty homogeneous as far as, originally they were all in one cluster, we thought. But now we're breaking them up into where they are in temporally. Did they just start with us? If they just start, people just buying a new car, you need to treat them a certain way. The car manufacturers have learned this, so has the banks. Come to find out, one bank that I worked with actually told me this story, is they found if they got a new online banking customer, if they called them in the first 60 days for a health checkup. Hi, I know you're a new online banker. Wow, a person, I didn't really expect that. I'm just calling to see if everything makes sense, if you've had any problems. It's kind of complex to get initially set up. They found that doubled the retention 1 year later if they made one phone call in the first month or two. But if they made that same call after 6 months, it had no statistical impact on the outcome. Why? Well, they've already decided, right? This thing is a piece of junk. I can't get it to work, whatever. And they told their spouses, they told everybody. So now they're firm in their conviction. You catch them in that first month. That shows you all these, even though these customers might be the same from your cluster, they're very different because where they are in your cycle. So you need to know that stuff so you know how to treat them at each point. So we want to know here who to acquire, what to offer, why is it best. Same for expansion, same for retention. How many of you at your firm now know what you want to do for each group of these customers? Wow. So first we dealt with the whole market. We reduced it down to the one we're going after. Now we're dealing them as they go through our life cycle in our firm. We're not treating them all the same, though. Let me give here in a minute, I'll give an example. Answering these questions generate positioning statements. Come to find out you have little positioning statements, meaning how do you want people to think about you right after you acquire? Onboarding, sometimes they call it. If anybody bought, a lot of car manufacturers, I think BMW is really a big one that does it. And that first time, that car dealer has to sit in the car and go through the iDrive, all the buttons. You can't get out of that lot. They'll wrestle you to the ground. And ultimately, you're going to get a phone call saying, how did it go and all. They have found a huge impact on your satisfaction if they can go through all the buttons. All this, show you all of it. And they even want you to come back a month or so later and do it again because now you've kind of learned a little bit and you maybe remember and you have the things you're kind of stuck on. You can also hit the little button in on the top and call somebody and say, oh, I don't really understand the buttons, and they'll explain it to you. Why? They have a lot of cool features, but if you don't figure it out and it's very frustrating, it doesn't work. And they've learned this onboarding is very important. So this is kind of how we're going to deal with customer dynamics. And realize these are our existing customers. Stage 1 was everybody. Now we're dealing with our own. Sometimes that gets people confused. Now, there's a tool we need. I went through a lot of tools in the beginning, but this is one you got to know. Customer lifetime value is a very important one. Why is it important? I'm going to make a simple example. I'm going to skip the slide. The example will get it better. Banks have done this a lot. Phone companies, they say, let's say you guys get a bonus, $50 for every new customer you get. And you can give them something. You can give them $100 in their checking account or a new toaster or whatever you wanted to do. What kind of customers will you go after? Any customer. You could care less. Give them a toaster, give them $100 in their account, you get your $50 bonus, you move on to the next one. You get anybody. You guys are in charge of retention. And they're throwing customers to you all the time. What do you think of the customers they're sending you? Are they customers that fit your niche in the market? Joe's job back there, are you still awake? Yeah, Joe's still awake. Joe's job is he helps people understand the MBA programs and steers them to the right MBA program. If he got paid just on any person he could go down, late at night down the street, and you could probably bring in some people. Say, fill out this application for an MBA. He gets $50. What kind of people is he going to bring in? Is it going to be our target market? Probably not. You can't. So I need a way that you make optimum decisions for you guys who later are going to deal with retention. The way to do that is customer lifetime value. I don't pay you based on just a warm body or all customers equal. I pay you on the expected discounted cash flow of all I'm going to earn. Think of it this way. A customer comes in, I'm going to earn money over time. Money, 10 years from now, I care about less than money right now. So I discount that with an interest rate, and it gives me a net present value. It's a little function on Excel. You don't have to really know the details. Anyway, that gives you one number that customer is worth for you. So if you have two people, and one of them's worth $1,000, the other worth $100, it's worth you spend 10 more times to acquire that customer. So we got to take that into account. So customer lifetime value is the best way to make decisions across this thing because it's taking into account a lot of stuff. Let's talk about what it takes into account. It looks at the true value of each customer. It takes into account individual customer differences, and it also takes into account the differences over time. How likely are they to stay? How likely are they to buy more? How likely are you to have a high margin? It all gets built into it. So it takes care of two of the problems. It also takes a trade-off among AIR strategies. In other words, I have to divide my marketing budget up between acquisition, expansion, and retention. How do I know to divide it? I do it based on how much increase in customer lifetime value it gives. If I get more by expanding, less acquiring, I ought to do that. Here's the formula for it. I'm going to skip that. It's just a little math. So how do you do it? Here's the steps. If we're in the SIG, we'll spend a whole SIG step going through how to do this. We're probably not going to really do it, but pretty much you segment your customers. You determine the migration path over time, identifying triggers and drivers. Triggers are very important. Sometimes you want to concentrate marketing efforts around, if you sell life insurance, how much do you think it bought within 3 months of a baby being born? Right? I mean, that's a trigger point. Do you want to spread your money across all the people all the time, or do you want to concentrate it, really hitting people right in that window? Graduate, that's why so many credit card applications are sent to undergrads. They're just about getting a job to have money. And we want them to run it up on our credit card versus somebody else's. Determine and prioritize the CLV of each persona. Determine positioning statements, what you want in each one. These are a little different than positioning statements than on earlier. These are what you want new acquired customers to think about. Then expansion, and then at the end. So you could have subtle differences. Wow, we want to be really easy to do. We might touch a customer a lot in their first 6 months, but you can't do that forever. They'd say, boy, you're stalking me. So you got to back up. No, it's true. I mean, we've looked at some models lately on people. What do you call it when you go to the bottom of the email and turn yourself off? Yes. Looking at that, now we're fine. Amazon's and all, they're fine tuning that. How much does it take? Because once they do that, then you've lost them if you're an online model. And there's models to kind of do this. So it's the idea. I'm going to do an example because I think you're going to get that more based on the timing. So here's an example I use this in the EMBA class. There's a hotel just down the street called the Decca. And a lot of the people could stay in that hotel. So just to try to make it, so we have customers coming in. And when they come in, The dollars is how much money I make on them. Here's 2 customers. This customer comes in, they're a baby EMBA. Their first couple weeks in the EMBA program. We're making a little money, they're just recently acquired. They have a couple migrations. One, they can come here and be satisfied, and then down here they can become a loyalist and I can earn lots of money. Or they can go here and be an angry EMBA and they can leave. Or they can come in here, this person's a one-nighter, they're just here for a business trip. Maybe they're getting interviewed and UW's not going to hire them anyway, so they're gone. They're here one day, and then they're gone. Well, how much marketing resources do I want to spend on them? They're a one-nighter, I might get business, whatever. So what we want to do is each of these are a migration path. So you want to segment recently acquired. So the first thing I do is I segment these guys, and I find, ooh, there's 2 groups of people showing up at my hotel that have never been in my hotel before. Some are these baby EMBAs. Now there's more than this. I just make it simple. Some are these one-nighters. So I've segmented new people in my business so I know what they look like. Then I track what happens to them over time. And I can do this looking at, ideally, you have a CRM database. If you have no data on your customer, this is difficult, but it can be done. You do focus groups. You look at people and where did you go? Where were you in the past? And then you find, why did this person go here? And you find, well, I wanted to have the internet didn't work well. People trying to do their homework for the next day, if the internet doesn't work well, they're gone. They cannot stay at a hotel, a baby EMBA, if the internet doesn't work well. If they close too early, the bar. I mean, Derek would not, no, I don't want to keep picking on Derek. I mean, hey, so you gotta figure out what's causing it. If you're finding this is going because they're closing the workspace, which is the bar, because all the MBAs don't want to go back to their rooms and work necessarily. They want to work in the bar on their homework before due the next day. They say, geez, we could keep the bar open 2 hours later. Hey, they'll buy a little something and it'll drive them here rather than here. So you segment recently, you find migration paths. I also want to find CLV. I made it simple by number of dollar signs. But you can actually calculate that, how much you're earning off of each of these people. And there's simple ways to do it. You could also see how you expand sales. Maybe the loyalists, when they come back for a football game, they also stay there with their family. So now you're getting repeat business. Or maybe they eat more meals there. It's a way to upsell and make more money as CLV. Determine the positioning. So once I did that, do you understand if you had that filled out for your firm, wouldn't you be able to come up with your AIR strategy, acquisition, expansion, retention, better? So really all you're doing, the first one is step, we broke up all our customers in groups, decided which group to go after. Now we focused on our own customers and we're understanding their dynamics over time. Does that make sense? Okay, so now we're going to go inputs and outputs. Let's see, good, we got kind of back on time. I was supposed to hit that at 8 o'clock, only 7 minutes. Okay, all customers change, so we want to manage dynamics. So this is like the second step. We take these inputs, your customers, your individual customers, sales, margins, costs, behaviors. You need to know how much money you're making on your different customers. If you don't know that, you can't do, is there something messed up on that? Oh, I saw something. If there's, first you get your individual customer, how much you're making on each group. Source, you have to know where they're coming from and what programs work, and you'll see why. And you look at lost customers. So these are all the inputs. Typically, all this comes from CRM, customer relationship management. You need a database to track your customers over time. People that don't have that, you can go do it one time, but ultimately, I'd say nowadays, any Microsoft, the dynamic Microsoft CRM, the dynamic CRM people will be here and they'll sell it to you. So there's a bunch of systems out there that aren't very expensive that you can do that. So now you feed it in your box. You do the first order, very simple, is the life cycle. Second is this bathtub. You also look at your lost customers. That's a great first start. You don't have to dive down into all this. Some of this is somewhat complicated, to be frank. But it just takes more than 15 minutes to discuss. Very doable. You can bring somebody in to do this. You can train people in your own firm to do it. Not rocket science. But it doesn't make sense to do the sophisticated models until you understand the big picture. Then you can fine tune and put numbers to what's happening. What do you get out of this? You're segmenting your customers. That's really what this is doing. You're segmenting your customers. And you give them names like baby MBA and that. We kind of laugh about it. But now, not only do you know in the whole market who you're going after, the mobility minded, now I know what stages within each. Oh, that's a baby MBA. We ought to treat them this way. It's easy. You can actually make training scripts for your service people. Starbucks should have that for a first-time employee. When a barista sees somebody come in for the first time, they ought to categorize them what group and how they treat them. What comes out? So this is segmentation of your existing customers, where they migrate, and how much they're worth to you. Where are you making your money at? Next, you write a little statement about each one. It's just a little statement. How do I want to treat baby MBAs? What do they want? Why are they here? How am I going to treat them? And then my employees and my service boundary spanners can deal with that. And then what am I going to do? What strategies work best? We didn't go into that much. I cut that out. But there's a whole set of strategies that work well for acquisition, expansion, retention. We're not kind of going through that today. But you can apply tools if you know what you want. I can say one thing. Don't pay people for just acquiring bodies, right? Because we know that doesn't work. You're not going to get, if you're going to do something, you have to get something that matches to their customer lifetime value. That's market principle 2. Did that make sense, the steps we've done? Yes?
So the AER strategy seems like it morphs as the industry you're in ages.
Mm-hmm.
The technology space that will cross into chasm model.
Mm-hmm.
It seemed like you'd have a different AER strategy if your business was on the left side of the chasm versus the right side.
Yeah, I'm not going to completely go into that, but the question is a good one in the sense of what we're really dealing with is the dynamics within your customers, within your firm. If you think about it, you could be in an industry. It's kind of like the weather. There's major climate change and then there's weather change. What we're dealing with is kind of weather. What's happening in your box with your customers over time? Realize you could be in an industry and there could be all shifts in what's happening in the overall industry. That would only be captured indirectly through this. Ideally, you do both. One works on usually 5, 8-year cycles. This works on 1 to 3-year cycles. One's operating within the other. But again, we simplify it.